We live in an age where identity is deeply tied to productivity. From the moment we are old enough to speak, adults start asking us a question that seems innocent on the surface, but quietly lays the foundation for how we'll measure our worth in the future. What do you want to be when you grow up? Not what brings you joy, not what kind of friend or sibling or human do you hope to be, but always what job title will define you. And so the idea is planted early that your future is a career path, that what you do for a living is who you are. Fast forward to adulthood, and it's the first thing we ask when meeting someone new. So, what do you do? We answer with roles, not with values. I'm a marketing manager, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor. Rarely do we say things like, I'm someone who loves building community, or I'm passionate about understanding people. Those responses don't fit the script. They feel too abstract, too soft, too unquantifiable for a society that values output over essence. Work becomes more than just a job. It becomes a label, a shortcut for identity, and society reinforces this idea constantly. The person with the busiest schedule is seen as the most committed. The one with the longest workday is admired for their dedication. The one who sacrifices weekends, holidays, and sleep is praised for being ambitious. Success, we are told, looks like long hours, big titles, overflowing calendars, and upward movement. But here's the catch. That kind of validation is fleeting, and more importantly, it's exhausting. Because chasing identity through productivity is like running on a treadmill that never stops. You hit one goal only to set the next. You reach one title only to wonder what comes after. The praise fades and you find yourself needing to earn it again. Meanwhile, you start to lose touch with the parts of you that don't generate applause. The parts of you that love poetry or playing with your pet or lying in bed with a book. The parts that are soft, slow, and beautifully unproductive. Eventually, you might even find yourself afraid to stop, to take a break, to rest. Because without constant motion, who are you? This mindset isn't just toxic, it's unsustainable. We burn out, we numb out, we wonder why we feel empty even when we are achieving. And yet, we keep going because we are terrified of what it would mean to slow down. But we have to remember, you are more than your job. You are more than your LinkedIn profile or business card. Your worth isn't tied to how many meetings you have attended, deals you have closed, or deadlines you have hit. You are allowed to exist outside your career. You are allowed to be a whole person, not just a productive one. And that shift in perspective can change everything. Somewhere along the way, the meaning of work shifted from something we did to something we are. What was once a means of survival or contribution has become the dominant lens through which we view ourselves and others. Our professions now serve as shorthand for our personalities, our values, even our place in society. Think about how quickly the question, so what do you do, comes up in social interaction. It's no longer just small talk, it's a way of categorizing someone. It tells us in a matter of seconds how seriously we should take them, how much respect they deserve, how much status they carry. Whether we admit or not, we have been conditioned to equate career success with personal value. This isn't entirely accidental. Our systems reward this mindset. Educational institutions gear students towards marketable skills more than critical thinking or emotional development. Popular culture glamorizes hustle, speed, and titles. Social media celebrates visible success stories, those who turned passions into profits or turned careers into personal brands. As a result, detaching ourselves from our professional identity feels uncomfortable, even risky. Many of us have internalized the idea that without a strong, impressive job title, we are somehow falling short, that if we are not climbing a ladder, we must be standing still, that the worth of our time is measured only by its economic output. And so we overwork. We tie our self-worth to performance reviews. We experience existential crises during career changes, not just because of uncertainty, but because of identity loss. But here's the thing. This isn't the natural order of life. This is a cultural choice, one that we have absorbed so deeply, we have stopped questioning it. Reclaiming a sense of self beyond your job begins with recognizing this. You weren't born to be a resume. You are not a walking LinkedIn profile. Your essence cannot be fully captured in bullet points or business cards. Understanding how we arrived at this place where careers have become identities gives us the power to step back and reimagine a different way of being. One where work can be important, yes, but not all-consuming. One where who you are is not limited to how you earn. When your career becomes the core of your identity, it might feel empowering at first. You are productive, respected, maybe even envied. But beneath that polished exterior often lies an emotional cost that builds slowly, silently, and dangerously. One of the first casualties is your sense of emotional balance. When your worth is measured by professional milestones, everything becomes high stakes. A bad day at work doesn't just mean a missed deadline, it feels like a personal failure. Criticism hits harder, and even minor setbacks can spiral into self-doubt or shame. You are not just disappointed in your performance, you question your value as a person. This dynamic creates a fragile emotional ecosystem. Your confidence begins to rise and fall based on external validation, promotions, praise, achievements. When things go well, you feel elated. But when they don't, your self-esteem crashes. And that kind of instability can quietly erode your inner resilience. There's also the matter of relationships. If your energy is constantly being channeled into being good at your job, there's often very little left for the people around you. Friendships begin to fade. You find yourself saying no to family gatherings, skipping weekend downtime, or mentally checking out even when you are physically present. Over time, your social circle narrows, not because you don't care, but because your time and attention are consumed elsewhere. Emotionally, this leads to a creeping sense of isolation. People may admire your work ethic, but few truly know you beyond your role. Conversations become transactional. Moments of real connection become rare. You may even begin to fear that without your professional identity, you have nothing interesting to offer, that you wouldn't recognize yourself if the work stopped. And then comes the burnout. One of the most common yet least understood emotional consequences of over-identifying with work. Burnout isn't just about being tired, it's a deep exhaustion of the spirit, a loss of joy, and a disconnection from yourself. It happens when you have poured so much of your identity into your job that there's no emotional buffer left. You don't just need rest, you need recovery from the belief that your output defines your worth. Worse still, many people stuck in this cycle don't feel they have the right to slow down. They feel guilty taking time off or prioritizing mental health. After all, if your job is who you are, then stepping away feels like stepping out of yourself. But it's important to recognize these emotional warning signs for what they are, not weaknesses, but signals. Indicators that you have been living in a structure that doesn't support your full humanity. You deserve an identity that can withstand change, criticism, or even unemployment. You deserve emotional stability that doesn't rise and fall with your inbox. You deserve to feel worthy even when you are not performing. And all of that begins with giving yourself permission to exist beyond your job title. Have you ever thought about what might happen if you stopped defining yourself by your job? I know I have. For so long, the thought of not having a clear professional identity felt a little scary. It wasn't just about the title or the status. It was about the fear of not being seen, not being enough without the title. I'll be honest. When I first started thinking about my career less, I felt a sense of panic. If I wasn't working towards the next promotion, the next milestone, the next paycheck, then who was I? Would people still see me as valuable? Would I still feel valuable? It took me a while to sit with this discomfort and understand that the fear wasn't just about losing my job. It was about losing the version of me that had been built around it. It's funny because in some ways, we all know that our value isn't just in what we do for a living. Yet, when we are in the thick of it, the fear of losing that part of ourselves feels like losing everything. I realized this was happening when I found myself obsessing over every little detail of my work and putting pressure on myself to always be performing at my peak. I remember days when I would wake up and immediately think, what do I need to do today to prove that I'm good at this? Like every day had to be a demonstration of my worth. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who's felt that way. Society tends to reward this type of hustle culture. We are often told to work harder, do more, and be more. And in the process, we forget that there's another side of us, one that has nothing to do with our careers. But even knowing this doesn't make it easy to step away from that mindset. For me, it wasn't just the job itself that I feared losing. It was the perception of myself. I had built so much of my self-image around what I did that I wasn't sure who I would be without it. If I wasn't successful in the traditional sense, Did that mean I was failing at life? These questions kept swirling around my head. It felt like there was this invisible scale constantly measuring my success against some standard of achievement that I wasn't even sure I cared about anymore. It wasn't until I started having conversations with friends, family, and even colleagues who had taken different paths that I realized how many of us were struggling with the same thing. We were all so worried about our identity being tied to our work that we'd forgotten to define ourselves by the things that truly matter to us. And what I came to understand was that it wasn't about not caring about your job or not being ambitious. It was about not letting your career be the only thing that defines you. It took a while for me to get comfortable with the idea that I could be valuable, worthy, and enough without needing to climb the next rung on the career ladder. I learned that my sense of self could come from places that had nothing to do with titles or job offers. It could come from spending time with loved ones, pursuing hobbies, or simply taking time to enjoy the quieter moments of life. Little by little, I began to detach my identity from my career, and while it wasn't easy, it was incredibly freeing. I still care about my work, and I still put in the effort, but I've come to accept that I'm not defined by it. I'm defined by so much more than that. It's okay to be ambitious, but it's also okay to step back and realize that you are valuable regardless of what's written on your business card. When you stop equating your work with your job, a quiet question begins to surface. Who am I outside of work? For many, the answer isn't immediately clear, and that's okay. Reclaiming your identity beyond your profession is not a switch. It is a slow, unfolding journey. But it's one of the most liberating things you can do for your emotional health and overall well-being. We often forget that we had interests, curiosities, and quirks long before we stepped into an office, opened a laptop, or started chasing KPIs. As children and young adults, we explored activities not for productivity, but for joy. Whether it was sketching, gardening, dancing, writing, gaming, building, hiking, or simply daydreaming, these were pure expressions of who we were without any pressure to monetize or master them. As we grew older and responsibilities piled up, those parts of us began to fade into the background. We told ourselves we didn't have time or that these hobbies were frivolous. But more often, we stopped engaging with them because we didn't see them contributing to our career progression. And when your identity is fused with your job, anything that doesn't build your brand starts to feel like a waste of time. This mindset needs to be gently unlearned. Reconnecting with forgotten parts of yourself can begin with simple everyday ways. You might set aside an hour each week to try something new, not for achievement, but for exploration. You might revisit a hobby from your teenage years. You might choose to spend time in nature, volunteering, cooking for fun, or reconnecting with people who know you outside your work environment. These small, intentional acts are powerful reminders that you are a multidimensional human being, not just a job title or an employee ID number. Just as importantly, give yourself permission to be bad at things. We live in a culture that values mastery, performance, and hustle, even in leisure. But reclaiming your identity is about rediscovering the things that make you feel alive, regardless of how useful or impressive they are to others. Let go of the need to excel. Let joy be enough. Sometimes this rediscovery also involves uncomfortable questions. What beliefs have I internalized about success? What stories have I been told about what makes me valuable? Whose approval have I been chasing? Unpacking these narratives isn't always easy, but doing so creates space to build a more authentic, resilient identity, one rooted in presence rather than performance. You might also find that this process reconnects you with parts of your personality that have long been muted. Your humor, your creativity, your spontaneity. These traits don't just make you more interesting, they make you more whole. Ultimately, you don't need to abandon ambition or stop caring about your work, but you do need to make space for the other parts of you to breathe again. Because a full, meaningful life is built not just on what you do, but on who you are when you are doing nothing at all. Once you've begun to rediscover who you are outside your job, the next step is more intentional, creating a life that actually supports and sustains that broader identity. This isn't about making dramatic changes overnight. It's about aligning your daily habits, environment, and choices with the truth that you are more than your profession. A good place to start is how you structure your time. If your schedule is packed with meetings, deadlines, and late night emails, then there's no room for rest, reflection, or joy. You are inadvertently telling yourself that work is still your top identity. Begin by carving out intentional time for things that matter to you as a person, not just a profession. This could be as simple as reserving Sunday mornings for reading or joining a local club that has nothing to do with your field. Boundaries also play a crucial role in this process. When you are used to overworking or being always on, setting limits can feel uncomfortable, almost rebellious. But protecting your time and energy is not laziness, it's self-respect. Whether it's logging off at a reasonable hour or declining an unnecessary meeting, these small actions send a powerful message. My life matters outside this role. Another important piece is who you surround yourself with. Relationships built solely around professional convenience can reinforce a narrow sense of self, but connections rooted in shared values, humor, creativity, or personal history help you stay anchored in who you are beyond your work. Make time to connect with old friends. Invest in new friendships that have nothing to do with your career ladder. Community gives us a mirror that reflects back all our dimensions, not just the ones tied to achievement. Equally vital is the space you live in. Your home environment can either reinforce the hustle mindset or support a more expansive version of you. If your home office dominates every room, or if you find yourself eating at your desk, your physical world may be mirroring a career-dominated life. Try redesigning parts of your space to nurture other parts of you. A cozy reading nook, a kitchen that inspires you to cook, or even a blank wall for creative projects. And finally, pay attention to your self-talk. How you speak to yourself shapes your identity more than you realize. Instead of saying, I'm not productive today, ask, what did I need today that I didn't give myself? Replace, I need to do more with, I'm allowed to rest. These shifts in language create space for compassion and help decenter your work from your sense of worth. Building a life around a broader identity is not about abandoning your career, it's about placing it where it belongs, as a part of your life, not the center of it. When your life reflects your wholeness, not just your job title, you not only feel more balanced, you become more resilient, fulfilled, and free. For most of my life, success was something that was defined for me. It was always about the promotion, the title, the recognition, and climbing the career ladder. Society, family, even friends, everyone seemed to have their version of success, and it all revolved around your professional life. There was a point where I started to feel like I couldn't separate who I was from what I did for a living. My job became a definition of my worth, and I know I am not done in this. But here's the truth I have learned. Success doesn't have to be one size fits all, and it certainly shouldn't be so tightly bound to your career. For a long time, I didn't even realize how much pressure I was putting on myself to live up to this narrow definition of success, until it started taking a toll on my happiness and my sense of self. What I've come to realize is that real success doesn't always look like a corner office, a pay raise, or a big title. Sometimes success is just about being able to slow down and breathe without feeling guilty. It's choosing to spend quality time with loved ones, or even being kind to yourself when you don't accomplish everything you plan. For me, it's not just about checking items off a to-do list, but about feeling at peace with my own choices and knowing I'm living in a way that aligns with my deeper values. Redefining success means giving yourself permission to say that it's okay if your path doesn't look like everyone else's. For some people, success might mean being able to take a spontaneous trip or have the flexibility to work on personal projects. For others, it might mean being there for a family member when they need you the most. These are things that have nothing to do with job titles, but everything to do with the life you are creating. The kind of life that isn't measured by your LinkedIn profile, but by your daily moments of fulfillment. I can tell you that for me, this shift in perspective has been incredibly freeing. It's like a weight has been lifted. The pressure to be always on has lessened, and instead of constantly feeling like I'm chasing some elusive notion of success, I'm able to enjoy the journey. I'm learning to measure my success in moments of peace, in the joy of spending time with my friends, or in the satisfaction of learning something new. Not because it will help me to get ahead, but simply because it sparked something inside me. And here's what's amazing. Once you redefine success on your own terms, the pressure you once felt to keep up with others fades away. You stop comparing your path to someone else's because you realize it's okay for your timeline to look different. Some of the most fulfilling choices I have made came when I chose peace over prestige, time over tasks, and meaning over metrics. Success isn't a static one-dimensional concept. It changes with you. What felt fulfilling and successful a few years ago may no longer serve you now. And that's not failure, that's growth. You have the power to keep rewriting your definition of success as you evolve. And trust me, it feels so much better to live a life that reflects who you truly are, not just who your job says you are. So the next time someone asks what you do, instead of just responding with your job title, maybe pause and think about how you really feel about the life you are building. If you're proud of your work, great, but also be proud of the moments that don't show up on your resume. The time you look for yourself, the relationships you have nurtured, the growth you have experienced beyond your job. That's real success. Let's be honest for a second. Life isn't some neatly packaged story where we always know what comes next. There's no guaranteed roadmap to success, happiness, or fulfillment. And that's okay. In fact, it's the messiness of it all that makes life interesting. When I began to step back from thinking of my career as my entire identity, I quickly realized how much I had been tying my self-worth to what I could achieve. I had always believed that success came with a linear path, that if I just kept climbing and checking off milestones, I'd eventually feel whole. But what I discovered is that fulfillment doesn't come from completing someone else's list of accomplishments. It comes from embracing where you are even when it's not perfect. The thing is, we often get caught up in the idea that we need to have everything figured out. But you don't need to know exactly where you are going all the time. The beauty of life lies in twists and turns that lead us to unexpected places, and that includes the career side of things. It's okay to not have a clear direction at every single moment. For me, it became about learning to embrace uncertainty. When I stopped defining myself solely by my job, I allowed myself the space to explore other interests, to fail, to take risks, and to try things that I might have never considered before. I realized that the journey itself, not the destination, was where the most meaningful growth happened. I started focusing less on having every aspect of my life figured out and more on being in the moment. It didn't matter if I didn't have a 5-year plan. It didn't matter if I wasn't in the perfect job. What mattered was whether I was allowing myself to live fully and enjoy the journey, even the messy, uncertain parts. This shift also helped me see that life isn't about ticking off boxes. The moments that really matter aren't necessarily the ones that are directly related to your job or professional achievements. Sometimes it's the quiet moments, sitting down with a cup of coffee, spending an afternoon with a friend, watching the sunset, or simply having a conversation that sparks something inside you. As I embraced this mindset, I started to feel lighter. There was less pressure to always do and more room to just be. I found joy in things outside of work, whether it was cooking a new recipe, reading a book, or spending time on a hobby that I had neglected. And honestly, that's when I started feeling more connected to myself, more grounded, and more in tune with what truly mattered. It was a reminder that life isn't about being productive 24/7. It's not about constantly being in achieve mode or hustling for the next big thing. Sometimes the most fulfilling experiences come from letting go of expectations and simply allowing life to unfold. In fact, the most interesting and rewarding things in life have happened when I have allowed myself to relax into uncertainty and embrace the unknown. I stopped trying to control everything and started trusting the process. The journey in all its unpredictability is where the beauty lies. You don't need to have everything figured out right now. You are allowed to explore, to make mistakes, and to change direction. That's the kind of growth that brings true fulfillment. It's easy to get caught up in the hustle, especially in today's world where we are constantly told that we need to be doing more, achieving more, and climbing higher. I used to think that if I wasn't constantly busy or working towards something bigger, I wasn't doing enough. But over time, I began to realize that it's not about being busy, it's about being present. And that's a really important distinction to make. Finding balance doesn't mean you have to be completely shut off from your career or ignore your goals. It's about figuring out what feels right for you and learning how to make time for everything that matters. For me, that meant recognizing that my job wasn't the only thing that defined me. And honestly, when I started to pay more attention to the other aspects of my life, I realized how much I had been missing by focusing solely on my career. At first, it wasn't easy to let go of that constant need to be achieving. I had to learn how to set boundaries, which was a huge challenge. For example, I used to check my work emails at all hours of the day, convinced that I had to be on top of everything. But once I started respecting my personal time, I found that I was actually more productive when I was working and more relaxed when I wasn't. Balancing work and life also meant paying attention to my mental health. I'd never given it much thought before, but I realized that constantly pushing myself without giving myself the time and space to rest was starting to take its toll. I was tired, overwhelmed, and even a little disconnected from the things that used to bring me joy. When I started to prioritize my well-being, whether it was through taking a walk, reading a book, or spending time with people who made me feel good, I started to feel like myself again. It's not about perfection. No one has the perfect balance all the time. Some days, work demands more of your attention, and other days, personal life takes center stage. But learning how to navigate those shifts without feeling guilty has been a game changer for me. It's about understanding that balance doesn't mean having equal time for everything, but rather making sure that the important things are getting the attention they deserve. For me, finding balance also meant redefining my idea of success. It wasn't just about getting ahead in my career, but about making space for the things that make me feel whole. Whether it's taking a break to do something creative, spending time with friends, or even just being still and doing nothing, I've realized that these moments are just as important as the big career wins. What I've learned is that you don't have to choose between having a fulfilling career and having a fulfilling life. You can have both, but it takes some intentionality. It's about setting boundaries that protect your time, being kind to yourself when things get overwhelming, and reminding yourself that it's okay to not always be on. Balance isn't something you find overnight. It's something you create for yourself over time. And the most important thing, it's okay if it looks different for you than it does for someone else. You get to decide what balance looks like in your life, and it's going to evolve as your needs and priorities change. What matters is that you are finding the rhythm that feels right for you. You are allowed to be more than your profession, and you deserve to live a life that reflects that. If you found this video helpful, or if it sparked something inside you, leave a thumbs up in the comment section and share it with someone who might benefit from it. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. How do you balance your career with other parts of your identity? Let's start the conversation. Keep living your life, embracing all the beautiful things that make you whole. I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, keep growing.